recording. Okay, cool. So now we've got the recording going. You're here for the keyboard ASMR. I have my really quiet switches on today because I don't want to, smash people. But we could do a little bit of this, and it should be fun. But no, I'll stick to my quiet switches for now. Welcome everybody. Ooh, we've got a good group going. I'm excited. Today we are going to be talking about reducers. We're going to be talking about reducers just in general in JavaScript, and then also the useReducer hook. And I'm going to be putting a CodeSandbox in the chat. And so I'm going to be posting it here in the chat, and I'll try to repost it a few times because I know some people are still kind of trickling in. But this is going to be the CodeSandbox that we're going to be working from. So that in the chat. I'm going to post it again. Make sure you have that open. And yeah, I'll be working from this. Go ahead and fork it into your own account if you want, or download it onto your computer if you'd rather work from your computer. Oh, my mic sounds crispy. I'm so glad. It's one of those blue Yeti ones. I have some keyboards on display. Yesterday I was wearing all red, and so today I went for a more greenish yellow thing, which I should have flipped it since it was St. Patrick's Day yesterday, but what can you do? Okay. Cool. Let's actually get into it. Let's start talking about reducers. I'm excited to go through this. I was kind of racking my brain for what we should do to talk about this, and so I decided to do one of my more, I know it's not St. Patty's Day green. My glasses are, though. My glasses are more of like that Kelly green or whatever. This was $2 at Walmart, and I couldn't pass it up because it's a sweatshirt for $2. You can't blame me for that. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the code. Look at that. Okay, so this is going to be our CodeSandbox that we're working with. Again, if you don't actually have the link, I'm posting it in the chat one more time. And I'm going to start talking about reducers. Our CodeSandbox is it's a nice little just character sheet. If you've ever played D&D, it's a very, very simple character sheet where you can put in your name, like fish. I don't know what your name is. I'll say Michael. I saw that Michael's in the chat. And then you can choose your background. And then we have a little Reach UI combo box there. So you can pick that. And then you can also turn on dark mode. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a very, very simple character sheet. But it's a fun thing. Why do I need useReducer when I'm perfectly fine with my 73 use state children? Please send help. Well, David, I suggest you look into a concept called state machines. They're kind of tough to understand, but I'm sure if you do some Googling, you'll find something useful. Okay. So anyway, we have some use states here. We've got some functions. We've got a combo box going. This is generally what the application is. But before we actually get into using useReducer and everything, I want to talk about what reducers are in general, not just from a React perspective, but just kind of from a JavaScript math perspective. And yes, I play Pokemon Go. This quarantine has been very tough to play Pokemon Go with, but thank you for asking. We are not doing breakout rooms because Twitch does not do that. Are reducers only for Redux? No. Very good question, though. I would say Redux really popularized the idea of using reducers for state management, but let's actually talk about let's talk about what they are. Let's just say that we have some array, and the array is an array of numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this. And we want to have a function as well. I'll say add. We have a function add that takes in x and y, and then it returns x plus y. So very, very simple. It's just these two little functions here. Now, what if I do let sum equals array.reduce add and 0, like that. So what happens here, if I were to log this, let me console.log the sum really quick, and then that should work. If I refresh the page, we get 15. So what's happening there? So when you have the array and add, and then we do array.reduce, what's actually happening is on the first iteration of this reduce thing, it does 0 plus 1. So it takes in this 0 right here, and then it adds 1, the first value of that array. And then on the second iteration, it does 1 plus 2. It takes the previous invocation and then adds it to the next value of the array. So it takes the result of this this addition and then adds in 2. And then, can you guess what the next one is? 3 plus 3. It takes in the sum of 1 plus 2 and then adds 3 to that value. And then, if we do the same thing, it's going to be 6 plus 4. So it takes in 3 plus 3 and then adds 4 to it. And then, as you can imagine, it's 10 plus 5. And so it takes in the previous invocation and then adds 5 to that. Does that make sense? I know you can Google math. David, you troll. Didn't you see the rules about not spamming, not trolling? It's fine. Anyway, so this is the steps that happen in when you call array.reduce with add and then 0, and we have all of these combined. That's what's happening, and then we get the sum, which is 15 over here. So this is all well and good. That's what reduce does in JavaScript. That's what reducers do in general. I'm sure there's some people here who have probably used MapReduce at some point. But anyway, oh, I see people talking about Pokemon. We're not talking about Pokemon right now. We're talking about reducers. So this is all great. But what if we consider this array of numbers to not just be numbers, and we're not just adding everything together, but we think of the numbers as a series of states in our application, and then we think of this 0 as the initial state of our application. So that's kind of a good way to think about how reducers came to be popular, to manage state. And so if we have some function and we'll call it reducer, then we can pass in a state and an action, and then we can return that state plus the action in some way. That's kind of what's happening here with this add, where it's state and action here being added together. This is kind of what's happening. And so now that we've done that, let's actually implement a little reducer function that's not just adding numbers, but actually is using states. Will we move states that belong together from multiple hooks into a single reducer hook? We will get to that. We have a lot of used states here that could be put together in the reducers. Anyway, well, yeah, we need to reduce spamming. Good pun. Ha ha ha. We'll filter it out, and I'll put you on the map for sucking. I don't know. Okay, cool. So again, we have the array of numbers. We added them together. We reduced them. I talked about this crap. Now we've got the reducer function. We're going to actually implement this reducer function, and we're going to make a series of states in a non-React little application. So let's just say we have an initial state here. Initial state. And then this initial state is going to be, no, we won't make it a function or anything. It's going to be an object. And we could say that we have a count of 0, and then, I don't know, cake is true. What else should I have in there? I'm looking at the chat. Any good books about React? This is the book. Ha ha ha. While you're talking like you do in your TikToks. It's all me. This is who I am. I'm a walking meme. Let's see. Oh, Xylence. How about that? Xylence switches. Xylence is switches. I like that. That's fun. Okay, cool. Anyway, we have this initial state. Now we're actually going to do stuff with it. I actually should have swapped these. Let me do switches or Xylence. Those are the switches that I'm typing on my keyboard right now. They're lovely. Okay, can we have a nested object? Sure, let's do that. The user is going to be a name Cassidy. How about that? Cool. This is our initial state for this fake thing that I am making. Now let's actually implement some actions in on our state. And so I'm going to have actions. And then these actions are going to be something like, we'll have an action type, and when I do a type add, we will increase this count by 2. How about that? And then we'll have an action.type, and we'll have minus, and we'll say that we'll decrease it by 4. And then we could have whatever actions we want. And what did I mess up? Why is it screaming at me? You know what, I'm just gonna keep typing, and I'm sure I'll see it and you'll all notice it, and I'll have to deal with the chatter. Let's say we're going to have an action where I eat the cake. And we won't need to take in anything else because we know that, you know, that's something I have to deal with. Why is this unexpected token? Oh, you know what? Let's make this an array instead of an object. That's why. That's my fault. I'm sorry. I see all of you people typing it. I appreciate it. That was my bad. I was just so excited about all of these actions that I could stick in there. Okay. Cool. Yes, array. Okay. Thank you all so much for all of your help. You're lovely people. Okay. Cool. So we have the initial state, we have the actions. Now we're going to make it so the reducer knows what to do with these actions. And so we've got the state and the action. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the action.type is equal to add, then we want to change it so that way our count in our initial state increases. And so we'll return the current state, will spread it. I have a TikTok about spread that I should have saved so that way we could explain what spread is. But basically, it returns the exact object, and then any other values that we change will be the only ones that are changed in that object. And then the count that we're going to be changing is the current state.count plus action.by, like that. And so we're taking in the type add right here. We're checking the action.type. I could have used any word for this. I could have called it fish and done action.fish, but type makes more sense. So there you go. Okay. So we have the action.type. We're returning that and we're increasing it. And then we also want to do an else if, and then we'll do action.type is minus. And then it'll be the exact same thing as before, only we're subtracting the value that's in that by thing right there. By right there. And we can keep going. I probably should have made this a switch statement because we have 3 actions there, but it's fine. Action.type is equal to eat cake. Now eat cake is going to be false because we no longer have cake. I have this bag of cookies here. I got it yesterday, and there's 1 cookie left. I ate so many cookies in the past day. It's great. Quarantine. Okay, state, and then we'll do cake is now false. I should do something with the switches too. But anyway, let's talk about this first. So why don't I make the value of by be -4? Because this is a generic reducer. I want to be able to populate this actions array by anything. I could do the exact same thing. I'll do minus again, and I'll subtract. What if I subtract -4? Oh man, what's gonna happen? You know what'll happen. Negative numbers subtracting negative numbers make an add. That's how math works. Anyway, so you could do whatever you want in there. But yeah, I could be doing a switch here. I chose to do ifs and else ifs here because I figure I only have these 3 actions right now, but I could have done other ones. But anyway, so we have this done, and now we actually need to log this and see what it looks like. And so I'm going to console.log the actions, and I'm going to call that reduce function that's in JavaScript, and I'll apply our reducer to it, and then I'll also give it our initial state. Okay. So given these actions, can you guess what the state is going to look like? Are you ready? Oh, well, it already showed up, so there you go. Okay, so the count initially was 0, and then the count was increased by 4, and then we subtracted -4, and so, you know, we added 2 and then subtracted and added 4. The cake is now false because we've eaten the cake. The switches are still silenced. The user is still an object here. I could add another thing where I have some type of switch, the switch, and then I could put like the switch type, and I could say, I don't know, clack is, I don't know, Zelios or something like that, and then I could just add another case for it, which again, that's kind of switch type language instead of if statements, and so I could do something like if action.type is switch, the switch, then in here I could say return and then state and then the switches, it's switches, right? Yeah. Switches are now action.clack, like that. And now if I do that, my switches are now Zelios instead of Xylens. Oh my gosh! So all of these actions here are applied in order on the reducer to that initial state to get our state value. Does that make sense? Are there any questions on that, on how that works? Yo, can you put any type in there? Yes, I can. And so if I wanted to do this add 10 like you just suggested, I could do add 10, or I could have put it at the bottom of the thing. It didn't have to be there. But now the count is 12 because we've added 10 to it. Amazing. Okay, why have the default actions as it? Oh, you know, I should just have the return state. You're right. That was more just an example earlier when I was comparing it to this add value. Oh, you mean add by 10 like this? Yeah, you could do that, but then it's no longer a number, because then it's 2, and then you append the string 10 right after it. And so yes, that technically works, but you know, JavaScript is fun. I'm not going to get into types right now, because that's not my type of argument. Okay, cool. So we have all of these lovely things. We have reducers, we have all of these actions that are applied to our initial state. This is generally how reducers work just in JavaScript and stuff, in React and all kinds of things in general, but we don't necessarily know what actions are going to exist. If I'm looking at my application here, I don't necessarily know if a user is going to click a button, if a user is going to add something by 10, if a user is going to pass in a value I don't expect. I don't know all of these things. And so that's why with reducers, we have a function that's called dispatch. And the dispatch function is the thing that populates this kind of actions array for reducers. And so whenever you see dispatch, whether you're using Redux or you're using a useReducer hook, that's what dispatch does. It basically allows you to populate this actions array so that way you can apply that as a state change. Are there any questions there? Have you seen how many useState are there in the while? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Arguments about JavaScript types end up being reductionists anyway. Ha ha ha. So funny. JavaScript and adds strings, Cassidy. It's that powerful. Yeah, it's so powerful. Are there enums in JavaScript that you could use? Yeah, no, you could make some kind of enum instead of or constants with these strings. Again, this is a very simplified example. But yes, you can set up a set of strings that it has to pick from, or constants. You could totally do something like that. Oh, you were replying to Brandon. Got it. That makes sense. Okay, cool. So fun, great. Let's actually implement useReducer now in our application. So I'm just gonna minimize these, but I've been saving it, and so if you've been using the link that I posted in the chat, you should be generally fine. Or you could read it here, or hey, I could just post it in the chat again. Great. Okay, so anyway, now we're back to our little character sheet application here. And so in this character sheet application, I have dark mode. And so if I click this, ooh, it's dark. I could say Tomzors, or some name here, and then I could have a different class. And if you type in a background that doesn't exist, then it has an error and it yells at you. And so I could have it be something like this. I'm using the Reach UI combo box here to pick something, and so I could be a guild artisan, or I could say pick something for me that's different. And it does all of this. This button does not affect the combo box, and that's because I didn't want to make it a controlled component, and that is a conversation for another stream. But ignore the fact that this combo box doesn't change when I click this button. Just pay attention to this. But anyway, these are all the different states in there, and we kind of just have buttons that set state here, and then I have set name when we on change in the input. Oh, if I make the name really long, then I have this name is way too long bucko thing. This is the combo box that I used where as I type it recommends different things, and I can pick that. Let's see if you're not already using it. Oh yeah, thanks for the link to Reach UI. Can I post it again? Oh, okay. I just sent it again. Great. Cool. So anyway, this is generally what this character sheet does. It's very, very simple. So we have these different error states that are being set in all of these different places, and it works. It's fine. But there's a conversation that happens once you start having more than 3 to 5 use states. You have to start thinking there are a lot of state variables floating around everywhere, and especially when you're using them in combination, where like here we're calling set background and set error, or down here we're calling set name and set background together. There's so many different ways that you could combine state changes and make it kind of just a little bit smarter with reducers. And so we can apply what we learned with our actions and reducers and stuff up here and actually use what's called the useReducer hook. And so we have use state, and then we can do useReducer. And useReducer is great. It allows you to do a lot of really cool things with state, where you can basically make more complex state changes rather than just calling like set dark mode and affecting dark mode. You can call dispatch, and then it can affect any number of states right there. Okay, cool. You also read correctly. UseState uses useReducer under the hood. That is a lot of the word use. But yes, useState is actually implemented with useReducer. So useReducer actually handles state for all of React. It's useState, it's nice and clean, and honestly I love using useState, and I prefer using it in a lot of cases. But when your state starts getting really, really huge and everything, it's better to use useReducer in my opinion, just because it cleans things up. And so just as a quick example, if I were to have like let something and then set something is useState, and then we update it and everything, and don't yell at me. It's fine. It's a typo. Don't panic. What I can do is then convert this into a reducer with let state and dispatch equal useReducer. And then in useReducer we have the reducer function, and then we have the initial state. Initial state. So this is just like what we had before, the reducer and initial state up here, but now it's down here. And so instead of initial state, what I would do is have an object that has something, and then here, whatever the initial state was, let's just say it's cake or something like that. I could do something is cake, and that's the initial state there. And then in the reducer, I could have this set something actually change things. And so instead of dealing with somethings and something else, let me actually replace all of these use states with useReducer. Let me see if you have questions. Will you cover the third argument taken? I will not right now. Keeping it simple right now. So we have our state and dispatch and reducer. What I'm going to do is in this initial state, I'm going to turn all of these into their initial states. And so remember in hooks with useState, this is the state variable, this is the function that changes the state variable, and then this is the initial value of that state variable. So to start converting this, dark mode, the initial state, is false. And then for name, I gotta figure out how to get rid of these pop-ups in CodeSandbox. The name, the initial value, is an empty string. And then go away, pop-up. You're in my way. If anybody knows how to do that, please let me know. Background will be an empty string, and then error will be null. Background, empty string, error is null, like that. Cool. So this is our initial state. Do I prefer let and const? I don't care. I just kind of type let more often because it's shorter. I did not participate in that argument because I disagree. Escape key removes the pop-up. Thank you. I'll do that from now on. Okay, cool. So we have our initial state here. Now if we want to pull out the state and actually use those state variables, we would do let, and then I'll just destructure it. Dark mode, name, background, and error equals state. And so we're pulling those out. Now we're about to get a lot of conflicting variable names. And so I'm going to comment these out, and now we'll get errors because we'll be calling these functions relatively soon. So when they pop up, don't freak out because they're just all of these variables or functions, and people are just like, hey, what are you doing? Those don't exist. Anyway, okay, so dispatch is the thing that populates that action array. And so when I say dispatch populating that array, what I can say is, let's just say with this set dark mode, what I'll do is I'll dispatch an action. And I'll say that I want that action to be of type toggle dark mode. Toggle dark mode, like that. And so now I can get rid of this set dark mode because we're dispatching it. And now up here in the useReducer, in my little function here, I can just take in this type, and I'll set up a switch statement instead of if statements this time, and have this type of toggle dark mode. So this takes in the, I think it's state and then action, or is it action and state? Oh, my brain is farting. State and then action, that's what it is. State and action. And then we're going to be doing, thanks Pablo for saying nice. I don't know what you're referring to, but that's great. Okay, state and then action. And so what we'll do is I'm going to switch on the action.type. And again, I just called it type. It could be anything. And reducers are very flexible in that you could kind of dispatch whatever you want to change state. You could even dispatch like an action type and pass in some function that changes things. But I'm just going to keep it to just primitive values for this. Okay, cool. So we have this switch on the action.type, and then we'll have a case for toggling dark mode. Toggle dark mode. That's what I called it, right? Yes, I did. Great. Okay, case, toggle dark mode. And then we'll have this, oh, you know what? It's this. It's a miracle that I can type a switch statement without Googling it because, let's be real, I still have to Google it probably 50% of the time. Okay, but we're live coding. Okay, so if toggle dark mode, then we're going to return the existing state, but dark mode will now be not state.dark mode. Voila. And now, why are you yelling at me? Did I actually mess it up? Oh, it's because I don't have a default case. I'll make the default case just be, I'll return the state. Typically, I might add some kind of error state here and be just like unknown action or something like that, but I'll just return the state and have it be done. This stream, yes, will be available video on demand. We're gonna save it. I'm recording it right now, and we'll post it to YouTube, and then it also is stored on Twitch for like 14 days or something. I don't know. Okay. It's called a reducer because, oh, David answered it. It reduces a ton of actions to a single state. Do I suggest to use TypeScript with React? I personally don't, but you can. A lot of people do. Okay, cool. Anyway, we've got this whole thing going. So now we have this toggle dark mode done. Let's replace our other states. So in this handle background select, we set the background value, and then we also have this in here. And so what I can do is I can create another dispatch And then the background select is right here, and it's if I click it from the list, oh, well, there's the errors I was talking about. Darn it, I shouldn't have typed in there. But anyway, if I click inside the box, that's what's calling this handle background select. And so I'll do a type of I'll do BG select because that's shorter. Select. Let's file preferences, hover disabled. Ooh, well, you know what? I'll do that next time. Okay, so we have the background select, and it's going to take in the value, and I'll just do value right here. And so I can take that one out, and then if backgrounds include value, I wrote this in a sleepy state, so what did I do? Oh, that's because if I start putting in a value that doesn't exist, then we have an error that shows up. And so I could actually have this kind of state set in my reducer itself. It doesn't have to happen here. And so I'm going to comment that out for a second, and hopefully my application comes back up. And then I'm going to do this type background select up here in my reducer. David, TypeScript is great if you get paid per hour. Okay, cool. So let's do another case, and it's background select. And then in here, I'm going to return, and then I'll have ... state, and then background equals action.value. Now we need to do that if statement that I had down here, this if backgrounds includes value, all that jazz. And I'll actually just copy it up here. And let me comment this out and format it, and then I'll show you what I'm gonna do. Okay, don't yell at me yet. Okay, what I'll do is I'll have error also set in here, but I'll do ternary statement. And so I'll do that question mark. Oh, and it has to be action.value. And then I'm gonna expand this. I'm going to say if it doesn't include it, then we'll do that. Otherwise it'll be null. Look how long that is. Oh man, beautiful. Okay. Cool, and now I can just take this out completely because I've basically just replaced that with that ternary right there. Okay, does anybody need clarification on that? Let's see. Oh, thanks, Pablo. Bravo. I love that. But anyway, we're setting the error to null or to this background does not exist whenever we're changing the background, and it's not a part of this backgrounds array that I have up here. And these I just Googled and added some in there. Okay, cool. So that part is done. On to the next one. I'm going to refresh the page really quick to make sure if I can get that to load again. If not, it's cool. It's probably just, oh, there it is. Hooray! Okay. Going back. And now I have to replace, I've replaced some of the errors and set errors. I probably need to replace the name. And so here's this set name, and then we have this set error in here too. And so I'm going to comment all of these out, and I'll do dispatch down here, and I'll say type is, I don't know, name character or something. And then I'll do, the name will be event.target.value. Like we had down here before. And then I can do this error check in the reducer as well. And so now that we have this name character, I'm going to comment that here and then go back up to my reducer. Sorry for getting seasick from going up and down so much. Okay, case, name character, return, ... state, and then we're going to also have the name. It's name, right? Yes. Name is action.name. I'm pretty sure that's what I put in there. Let me just check really quick. Named character, name action.name. Perfect. Name action.name, and then we also want to do another thing for the error, and we'll say if action.name.length is greater than 15, Then we need to say that the error is too long, or the name is too long. That name is way too long, bucko. Otherwise, we don't need the error to exist. Cool. And so, in theory, as I type this, hey, it worked. Awesome. Cool. Oh, I still have a set error out in the wild. Let me do that. Let's see. Said what? Probably not the topic of the stream, but is X state the next step from useReducer like how it is from useState? I haven't tried it, but meaning to. You should talk to David K. Piano, who is here on the chat. He can answer your questions. I'm pretty sure that's what I put in there is the best possible argument for TypeScript. That's funny. Will the consecutive errors overwrite the previous? Yeah, I know set error is not defined, bucko. React Training, what is your YouTube channel? Look up React Training on YouTube and you will find it. Michael, who is here on the chat, he has a bunch of really great videos on there that explain React Router and a bunch of good stuff. Okay, cool. So I have gotten rid of this. I'm going to delete that. I've gotten rid of this. I'm going to delete that. All of you code hoarders who comment things out instead of just deleting them are cringing right now. Okay, now let's see. Where else am I setting stuff? Here. Here. Oh, this is where we just are dismissing the error. I'll just do dispatch and then I'll call this dismiss error. Type is dismiss error. And then I'll do a case for that. So then when I scroll up, we have case for dismiss error. And then in here we'll return state and then error is null. So it's kind of zen almost as we slowly replace all of these states. Okay. Slowly but surely. I think, let me look up the word set, I'm sure. These ones. Okay. Yes, so this one is random ones. And because these functions are just ones that I wrote outside of this, I can just do dispatch and then call it random. Type is random values. And this I actually want to bring up, which I think is really cool. When you have all of these individual use states with set name, set background, set error, all this stuff, they're very specific to the variables that you're changing. But when you use a reducer, you can kind of use more product-focused language, where you could say, this state changes happened when a user selects random values, or this happens when a user has dismissed an error. And so it's more product-focused rather than variable-focused. And I think that's kind of a really nice aspect of reducers. You don't have to think about the individual variables that are changing. You just think about the state that the application is going to be in, combining all these variable changes. So I'm going to save that and then do a case for random values. Case random values, and then for that I'll return state. And then I have these functions up here that I have for random background and random name. So that's what I'm referring to. And so I'll be doing name is random name, and then background is random background. And so it's nice and modular doing it that way. You know exactly where your state changes are happening. You don't have to kind of jump around your code, because if it's something that's wrong with the state, it's going to be somewhere in the reducer where it's wrong. Or if it's something that is wrong with the thing that's changing the state, then you know it's a dispatch function. Oh, why do I see jQuery in the chat? People. Okay. Hoarding makes it look like I actually comment code. Haha. Let's see. What package am I using to auto break and tab? It is just built into CodeSandbox. Today is day 2 of me ever actually using CodeSandbox, so I don't know what they have on a default, but I'm assuming it's prettier. I'm pretty sure it's prettier that they use, where it just formats unsave. Poor jQuery used to rule the world, now the butt of jokes. Some people love jQuery. Ha 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 ha. Okay, Hello, friends. So rather than grow the code in multiple places, grow it in one place. Well, here's the thing. We're growing it in one place, but also what you can do is you can create a custom hook where you can, let's just say you want to use these exact values of state elsewhere in your application. You don't have to, like in your whole React application, you don't have to redefine all of the state variables and individually use them in each of those components. You can just wrap this useReducer in your own custom hook and call it like useMyReducer or something, and return this state and dispatch, and then you get all of those state variables that you want, but across your application, which is really good for kind of global states, and especially if you're using context, which we'll talk about that another day. If you're using context, then you can share state and make more global states in your application, and it's really nice for that. Is this also using Redux, or are hooks pure state management sans Redux? Sans Redux. You can basically have like 99% of the power of Redux with just hooks now. Between useReducer and the context API, that's pretty much all you need for state management for that kind of thing. I'll talk about context someday, but yes, it's very cool. But yeah, no Redux. Redux was great for its time. I don't want to bash it. I shouldn't say great for its time. It led to good solutions at the time. I was never a huge fan of Redux because I felt like you shouldn't have to touch like 5 files to make one change in a component, but it led to a lot of really good ideas. And Dan Abramov, who made Redux, is now working at Facebook and implemented reducers into React specifically for this purpose. So now, again, I shouted out to you code hoarders. I've got to get rid of my comments. I think I have replaced all of the set states in there. So let's see. Got dark mode. Look at that. Beautiful. I can do a random name. We've got someone named Radial, and it's a hermit. By the way, the names are coming from this package called Friendly Words. It's just nice words. And so we've got, their name is Paper, and they're a criminal. But I could say that my name is Cassidy, and then my background is, I'll be the criminal. Smooth criminal. Actually, I wouldn't be a very smooth criminal. It would be embarrassing. Again, toggling the dark mode. If I were to say Cassidy is super, that way name is way too long, bucko. Dismiss it. I don't even care. I am super cool. Shut up. Anyway, this is our application now completely using reducers from the ground up, which is great. It seems very long and gnarly, but once you understand it from that kind of theoretical perspective, it's really not that bad. It's really just defining types and then changing the state based on those action types. Let's see. Flux is a pattern of dispatching actions to store updates. Would you have the actions and reducer in separate files? Some people do. I have sometimes, like I've had a file where it has like my initial application state and my reducer in one file, and then I import them into a reducer that I use later. You can. Yeah, this function could totally be defined elsewhere if you wanted to. You could even, again, if I wanted to make a custom hook, I could say, or I'll do function use my special reducer. Can I even spell reducer like that? And what I could do is I want to say that I want to return state and dispatch, and then I can just copy all of this. Oh, it's gonna be long. I can copy all of that, take it out of my component completely, and put it inside of this. And so now I'm going to get so many errors. Don't panic. Okay, now what I can do inside of my component is I could do let state and dispatch, oh my gosh, state and dispatch hatch equal use my special reducer, and now the behavior is exactly the same as before, but the reducer is now not in the component. You couldn't do stuff like that with lifecycle methods, am I right? So now, hey, we can have this reducer defined elsewhere, and I don't even have to destructure that right here. I could actually do this right here and take this out completely and not even have a state variable. It's you can make things nice and clean. This is kind of like that map state to props almost, the way we pulled that up right there. Would you suggest starting by writing your application with useState and then refactor to useReducer as you did here? That is up to personal preference. I personally like useState because it's nice and clean, but and so I tend to do that where I use a lot of useStates, and then when it starts getting gnarly, I convert it to a reducer. But there are some components I've written where I'm just like, okay, I know this is going to be gnarly. I know this is going to be big. I'm just going to start with a reducer from the beginning because at least then I have some control. I don't have to do a rewrite later. Okay, let's see. Let's see. You can include it, even pass in more arguments. Yeah, you can pass in all kinds of great things. You can put dispatch in useEffect. Yes, you can. In a larger application, is the norm to then pass the dispatch function into your child components to modify state? Yeah, you can do that. What I've done, and I don't want to like show you my entire file system, but I can pull up a code sample. Actually, I do open source. Okay, one second. To-do meter. If you'd like to see an application I wrote, there's this thing I made called To-Do Meter. It's a desktop to-do app. It's very, very simple. It's just something that I made for myself because there's like a little progress bar that fills up as you do things, and so it makes me feel satisfied when I've actually done tasks. But anyway, what I did with this is I set up an app context, and so I have a hook that has use app state, use app reducer, and that actually, I have this whole app state reducer that I made, and so it has that whole switch statement that we just talked about, and it defines all the use states and everything. The default is returning a state, etc. And then what I do is I have an app state provider that I made. And so I load an initial state, and that comes from either local storage or is a new state if it's undefined. Then I do useReducer. I put in that app state reducer function that I just talked about, put in my initial state, and then I pass those values in to via context. And so in the context then, everyone inside this app context has access to the state and the dispatch. And so when something calls use app state, it's getting that first app state variable, and then if I do use app reducer, it's getting a second one. I did combine those at one point because, as you notice, it's just getting the values from the array, but I found that it was just simpler to do it this way. But anyway, yes, you can pass in the dispatch to different children in your application. But yeah, this is an app I made called To-Do Meter if you want to check it out on my GitHub. I'll post it in the chat actually really quick. But yes, context makes things available. It's not on props. Again, I don't want to turn this into a context talk, but let's just say here in this to-do date. In useAppState, it's getting the state object, and so the date is a part of that state object, and so I have like this day display and month and year, and so it's just getting that value, not as a prop, but from that state variable itself. So check it out if you want to look at that more. But yeah, you could pass it in as a prop too. I don't think that's necessarily a recommended practice though, but yes, you can. Let's see. I think those are all the questions that we had there. We are almost out of time. And so what I want you all to do is we have this React mini character sheet that we've made. I'm gonna fork it myself so that way we have the sheet that we made already. And again, I'm very new to CodeSandbox. So I have the use state version that we initially made, and I'll post all of these on Twitter. We have the initial one with use state. We have the character sheet that we just converted to reducers. Now, this one, I'm going to call this activity sheet. Activity sheet. And that's for you. So I want you to fork this one. And I already posted the GitHub one above. I can post it away. I still use CodePen. I just this is really good for for getting a lot of node projects. But anyway, in here, what I want you to do is take our little character sheet application, and what I want you to do as your kind of activity for the day is fork this and add another thing to this. Instead of name and background, maybe add like strength. And you could have like a counter that goes up and down if you want, or add some I don't know, race or something like that for your character. And so I have this link here that for inspiration if you want to check it out, and it's just a character sheet that I found, and it has again like strength, dexterity, alignment, faction, all of these different things. Add a value to this list so that way you can have, I don't know, name, background, and then something like, yeah, race or alignment or cake preference. Again, typing is hard. Something like that. And then add a form value here, and then add a case in the dispatch. And this will be really good a really good exercise for you to see how the dispatch works and experiment with it. Yeah, I hope you enjoy this. I'm going to kind of pause a little bit. I want to stick around until noon PST, and so I can keep answering your questions. But please do this and then send me what you've made. And you can also completely override the styles. I made the styles as basic as possible, as you can see. I think I have red values, but besides that, it's all just black and white. But yeah, add another value to this sheet right here, to this character sheet, and then do something with the form. You can use the combo box if you want. You can add an array of values like I did with background, the backgrounds right here if you wanted to. You can do whatever you want, but try to add something to the sheet and then stick it in this reducer. I'm glad you're all doing all right in the self-isolation. I admit my lifestyle hasn't changed a bunch because I work from home, but I am traveling less, which is, different. I do miss playing Pokemon Go. If you all want to add me on Pokemon Go, I don't want to tweet out my friend code because I've been spammed before, but what I could do is actually DM me on Twitter if you want to be friends on Pokemon Go, and I'll add you because I don't want to be spammed too much. But I'm so glad that you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Yes, stay safe. If you have to go, no hard feelings. Definitely send me and tweet out your character sheets. I'd love to see what you end up doing with it, because this stuff is really, really valuable to know, and it's really helpful as you're making larger and larger React applications that need some more complex state changes for sure. And no worries if you didn't make it on time. Don't worry about that. We'll keep doing these. We would like to do them pretty regularly. Maybe not every day like we're doing this week, but at least once or twice a week. And yeah, we'll be posting the videos on our YouTube, and they'll be on Twitch for a while as well. One question: I've read that the context API plus useReducers could cause unnecessary re-renders. Is this an issue? Here's my opinion on that. It will only cause unnecessary re-renders if you put everything in your global state unnecessarily. You can have contexts within context. If you've seen Inception, you can do contextception. What I would do is let's just say I have, like, for example, some authentication value that either changes or doesn't change. That makes sense to put at a global context value. But if you need to put to have like certain things rearranged, for example, based on like the user's locale or something like that, don't necessarily put that at the very top level unless you need it at the top level. And that was one of the things with Redux that made applications get way too bulky and too huge, is people put their state changes up at the very top, and then it was just kind of chaotic because they're just like, all these things are changing, there's unnecessary re-renders. But if you use context in a smart way, and don't have things that change a ton and unnecessarily don't need to be touched by the values in context, then you reduce, for lack of a better word, those unnecessary re-renders. You can have different levels of context throughout applications. You don't need to just have one context, one store in that context. And that reduces that problem that I think a lot of people have run into because they have the understanding from Redux that you have this global store. You don't need that global store. You can just use context in different aspects of your application that need those kinds of things shared. Oh, hello, Argentinians. That's fun. Still didn't see the link to my GitHub? Okay, well, my username is Cassidy, and it's my username for everything except for Instagram because a teenager stole it from me. But anyway, this is the repo that I mentioned. And then, yes, you can have a different provider per concern, yes, and that's totally allowed. Belgium, wow! Oh, people are from all around the world. Yeah, and this is my Twitter too. I'll stick that in here as well. And then also the links are, if you look below, I put all the links for React training things. If you want us to come to your company and actually give a full 2 or 3 day training for you, we are very happy to do that. We would love to do that, and I know that everybody is in remote isolation right now, but we do remote workshops too. And I actually really love doing remote workshops because it kind of, even though everybody is spread out, it feels weirdly intimate because we're all kind of chatting with each other and going over exercises and stuff. So definitely bring us in and talk to your manager if you need to get approval, because we would love to do that. Have I stopped using Redux completely in my projects? Yes. Actually, if you look at the PRs on that to-do meter application that I talked about, the most recent release of it was a giant rewrite, because I originally wrote it in like 2016 or 2017, taking out all of Redux, making it updated with React, and then converting all reducers and everything to using useReducer and hooks, and taking out Redux completely. It is great. Oh, hello, fellow Seattleite. Woo. This has given me thoughts on how to host classes for work. I'm glad. If you have a bunch of used states, but you're never changing multiple states at the same time, what are the benefits to changing to useReducer? That's a good question. It's really, there's a few different benefits. For example, just kind of having all of your states defined in one place, and again, shareable if you wanted to do that. If that's not a case for you, you can keep using used states. You can have 50 used states if you want, but it starts getting pretty dang gnarly. And having like a single state object that you pull those values from can be useful. And so useReducer allows you to be a lot more flexible. There's a lot of different state changes you can make logic wise. You can throw in a lot more business logic in that way, and so you don't have to have a bunch of business logic and then call a state change. You could have all of that logic happening in your reducer if you want. There's a great blog post that Kent C. Dodds posted recently with should I use state or useReducer, and he talks a lot about that. And so if you want to read more in depth, he did a really good job, and he actually had a really kind of fun example. I liked this custom use undo hook thing that he did, where he talks about past, present, and future states and all of these different state combinations with use state, and then he cleans it up a ton later with examples, basically with reducers. So check that one out. Actually, I'll post that link. I'll post that link in the chat for you all. There you go. Let's see. Are sagas still a thing? I have never used them, I admit. So I couldn't tell you, honestly. Let's see. You made a location tracking application. Please do check it out. Okay, I'll check that out. Cool. Are there any other questions? Did anybody work on their character sheets? I would love to see them. You can also just like tweet them to me. That's cool too. And then what do I use for that type of work? Like, what do you mean by that type of work? Please, like, elaborate specifically. Regarding character sheets, what is React's alignment? That is a good question. I feel like there's a definitive answer for that. It's definitely not neutral. Well, it could be. It could be chaotic neutral. Async API hooks and connections to the backend. That's where I would use useEffect. And that's a hook that I talked about yesterday, and we did that on a Zoom call, and so I know my boss Ryan was gonna stick that on our YouTube channel later yesterday or sometime today. I'll ask him if it's not on there, but those kinds of connections you can do in the back end. Cool. Well, if anybody doesn't have it, chaotic neutral does seem like a proper choice. Yeah, I could see that. All right. Well, I think with that, we're at 12:02. So for those of you very far east of me, go to bed. It's time. And I hope that you had a good time with this exercise. Definitely send me your sheets. I would love to see what you end up making. And until next time, I don't actually remember what I was going to teach tomorrow. And I actually don't know if I'm going to be the one that's teaching. It might be me. It might be another member of our team. We'll figure it out. You'll see us tomorrow. It'll be fun. I know my coworker Brad is going to be teaching on Friday, and for those asking about useEffects, he's going a deep dive into useEffect on Friday, and it should be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to it because he knows useEffect incredibly well and has written some really good blog posts on it. Cool. All right, team. Thank you all so much. It's been a really good time. I had a really good time, and I didn't give myself water. I've only been eating cookies this morning, so I'm gonna go rest my voice. So if I do end up teaching tomorrow, you don't hear me talking like this. Cool. All right. I will talk to you all later. Thanks so much, and yeah. Learn React.